So before we got on to today's video, I thought I'd show you the completed project from last week. So last week I didn't get so far as to finishing my door wreath. So that is the front section, and that is what it looks like at the back. So that is the straw base, and I use the wire to bundle up my pieces of wheat and poppies and lavender, and then bound them all on with string. Now I'm going to be using a glue gun today to do my fixing, and a glue gun is quite good to use when you're using dried materials because it's a quick fix. So if, for instance, I decided that something wasn't lying quite right in my wreath, I could go in with my scissors, you know, pinch off, cut off the offending piece of greenery, and then I could glue it back in the way that I wanted it to go. So that I've lost it now, but there was a piece of barley, I think it was this piece up here, and it seems to be wiggling the wrong way. So that's a really good thing that you could do your making with your string and making your bundles, and then sort of come back and do a bit of TLC and use your glue gun. So there's no shame in mixing your techniques with the pure floristry techniques I showed you last week, but then sort of going into your crafting element when you use your glue gun. So it's a really handy way of, you know, sort of on the spot fixing. So I'm going to put this down. So I've had mine propped up. I don't know whether you saw the photograph that I put up. It's on my mantelpiece at the moment with some other bits and pieces. So for today's project, we're going to be using a grapevine wreath. So I'll just get my notebook out of the way. And you can buy these ready-made. And that is the link to, I sent you a link to something very similar to this. So inside, it's got a chunkier stem, and then it's got the vines around it. So it's something that I don't actually know what it's made out of, whether it's made of honeysuckle or clematis, or if perhaps you've got a Virginia creeper in your garden or wisteria that needs cutting back. This will be a really good wreath that you could actually home make. So Joan, you're saying that you still haven't got any barley or lavender or wheat to make one. Well, the thing is, Joan, make it with what you've got. And you remember last week my sister came into the group and she was going to make hers out of a bunch of dried flowers. I think some of them were artificial as well. And she sent me a couple of photographs showing how she's starting to make hers. So it's just whatever you've got to hand. And of course, whenever you feel inclined to go and do it. So it may be that perhaps if you are, you know, shopping or looking around, you know, from now till next year, that if you come across some materials, you can think, aha, I'll put those to one side and I can make the bound wreath that Julie showed me how to do. So there's no rush, just as and when you feel inclined to do it. And perhaps now is the thinking time, and it'll be next summer that you may well make them when you're thinking, actually, when I go for that country walk, I am going to take my scissors and pick up a few things I see in the highways and the byways, and especially with the poppies. So they would have been ready for you to pick and dry probably about June time. So it's almost like we need to think now and plan ahead for the future to make sure we get what we want. So you'll see on this wreath here that it's been bound over with string, and I'm actually going to take that string off. So I have got a second wreath on the side here that just looks slightly looser and more rustic, really. I decided I didn't like the bound bits of string on. And Sue's saying she's made one of these sort of wreaths out of forsythia. So it's any type of stem, and you just need to make sure it's got a bit of flexibility to it. I mean, you've had willow growing in your garden, or silver birch, or the weeping willow stems, anything that you could sort of bind around your hand, which wasn't going to snap. And that's, you know, a really good way of making it. And why not make it yourself? Because it makes the whole project more enjoyable. So I need to remember which way is up on my wreath. I've handily left the little tie that came on the front. And to decorate it, I'm going to be using some helichrysum. So I know that we've been talking about that over on the Facebook page. And I know that Sue, you did buy some helichrysum, and so have I. So I've got a packet here that got delivered over the weekend. And when you buy helichrysum, you need to make sure it's the dried flower heads you're buying, and you're not actually buying the seeds for the flowers. And sometimes you'll find that you buy them according to number, so whether you're buying 10, 20, 40, 50, or sometimes by weight. So I've weighed these and they weighed 85 grams. So I think I must have bought these by the litre. So I've got a litre jug here, and well, I've got quite a generous amount then I'm not quite sure what quantities I bought them in. So I reckon I've got 2 litres of the flower heads here. And these are a great flower to, if you're into your dried flowers, to actually grow. And as you know, I'm no plants woman, but they are, you know, easy to grow, I understand. And when you pick them, you just need to be sure, like with any dried flower, I would say this one here is perfect, that when you pick them when they're about 3/4 open. So this one's got quite a closed head in the center, whereas this one here, for comparison, is much more open. And you'll find that as they open, they have like a daisy-like center. And I think the more they open, the looser the petals become. So you need to, if you're going to buy these to dry, you need to think of them as a crop, and you need to crop them just before they come into perfection. But if you're growing them to enjoy as a cut flower in the garden, you can cut them at any stage, which is every time you think about drying things, you do need to crop them just before they've reached peak perfection. And I did post a link in the invitation to the class, Joan. That was an Amazon link, but I actually bought these from a company called the Great British Florist. So I'll put the link to that as well. So they come in a variety of colours, and the only ones available, they seem to be in short supply. Obviously, I think dried flowers are in demand at the moment, but I have got a slight variation. This is sort of a reddish one here, but they do come in all sorts of colours, but they are muted colours. So from sort of parchment white to yellowy to some of the more russet and reds. So I have ended up with a jug full of orange, basically, that says autumn time. So that is what I'm going to use today. So what I'm going to do now is to bring my side camera in. So this is the moment, if you want to see in full view what I'm doing, if you click on the, if you go up to your gallery, I've got my big picture in the middle, and then I've got all your faces across the top. If you find the one that is with my hand and my wreath and my glue gun to the side, if you click on that, there's 3 little dots, and you can make that, you can pin the video. I think that will work, or I will, if I do that, spotlight for everybody. Oh, I think I might have, yes, I think I might have done that for everybody and unpinned it. But I'm hoping that you can see what I'm doing. So I'll move the camera in a little bit closer. Okay, get the angle right there. So you can see what I'm doing in front of me. Now, this is quite bizarre because as I touch my wreath, there's a short time delay as it appears in the picture, so it's slightly disconcerting. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got my wreath and I've taken off that bound string around the edge. I've got a hot glue gun to the side, and that's been heated up. I've got a spare glue stick in case I need it. And then I've got my flowers. So the first thing I'm going to do is to tip my flowers out and to make a little bit of mess on my table. Now, I am going to start off by concentrating my my flowers in one part of my wreath. And as last week when I said that you don't have to complete the whole wreath, you could create an accent area if you wanted to, and you could leave the rest of your wreath bare, or you could bind it over with string. So this is such a pretty wreath that I think if I don't cover everything, I think probably I will just leave it as the twigs because they look really pretty. But I do want to grade the materials before I use them. So I'm not going to spend ages doing this, but some of the flowers are more open than the others. And if I, that one there, oops, it's quite strange trying to find the angle there. It's very open, so I'm going to put that one to one side. So this is just going to be a quick flick through. When you're making this at home, you can spend more time doing it. So I'm trying to get the smaller ones in one pile and the flowers that are bigger and more impressive, more open in another. So I won't spend ages doing this. I will just do it as the first bunch or so. So I've got two rough piles. These ones here are the bigger ones, and you can see that they have fully opened. Perhaps even if I do that, I'm getting clever now with my angles. that is fully open. And I would say, if I was being really picky, this is too open to use in your wreath, because I think it's going to start falling apart. It opens so much that the petals relax and fall open. Whereas this one here on the other pile is a perfect example. You can see that those central petals are still really tightly bound, and they're sort of curling inwards. So they're nice and tight and they haven't reflexed all the way out. So hot glue gun, here we come. So of course, taking care that you're not going to burn yourself. So go around the other side of my camera leg there, and take a flower and glue it. So before you automatically glue, splurge glue all over the center of the back of your flower, you just need to have a think about where you're going to put it, because sometimes the point of contact where it's actually going to glue might not be dead center. So just have a think about that before you put loads of glue on. It might not actually be the right place. So I put a little bit of glue there and put my first flower on the top. Now the glue is pretty much instantly drying, but if you pick it up too soon and rattle it too soon, everything is going to fall off. So you may find you need to add in more glue. You know, after a few seconds, you can see I can waggle that and it's staying. So I'm going to build up a little area of interest here, but using my biggest flowers first. And this isn't difficult to do. It's quite a methodical and meditative practice almost. I can hold my flowers in place and then start gluing them. Now this flower here has really opened up. So I've got a choice here. Do I put it in the right way up, or do I turn it over and make use of the back of it? Can you see the stalk coming out at the back? So that's an option. I think I'm going to make use of it the right way around. So glue on the back and press it in. So this is a much quicker way of making your wreath. If you were doing it in pure floristry terms, you'd be thinking about wiring up each individual flower. I think though that the helichrysum are quite brittle and they would fall apart before you got on to making it. So I'm going to make a cluster of the flowers here, and as I work with them, I need to be thinking, you know, about putting them, attaching them to the wreath to create some interest. So instead of putting them one next to the other, you know, and just in flat lines, to try and vary the angle of them a little bit. And here I've got 4 put down already. Well, there's nothing to say I can't just add a 5th right on the top, and that will mound up, and you get there a little bit of a profile on the edge, so it's not totally flat. But because the whole wreath is pretty because of the twig effect, it's you're not quite so restrictive in your artistic interpretation of what you're doing, unlike last week when we had the straw wreath, which was a little bit ugly on the side. So I was trying to make sure that I covered this side edge. And what I'm going to do is, when I've got my sort of few base components on, is I will start to slide the flowers out into a more decorative placement. So I've started off with a little bit of a mounded edge there. And what I'm going to do next with my smaller pieces is, it's almost as if I've put a splat of paint here. And imagine if you then smeared the paint around the side edges. So I'm going to go with my flowers, and they're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until I end up with my smallest flower at the outer edge of my design. So I'm thinking at this stage, I'm just going to do a crescent style arrangement that might sit something like that. So it will go flowered from here to the edge to this area of interest, and then to peter out again back around the side. So if I was to mock up this one bit here, I might decide I want to have my flowers more openly placed. So I've got more of the wood behind. I can't get them to balance here, but you can see what I am doing, or perhaps not, to sort of have more of an open look to them. So it doesn't have to be solid flower all the way round. It can peter out. And if I find I've got loads of flowers left, I might decide to come in between the 2 points here, the 2 smallest flowers, and come around and fill those in. So it's just a matter of sitting and gluing. So it's something you could be doing while you were, having a conversation with a friend. You could be FaceTiming a friend. You could be listening to the radio. You could be, watching the telly at the same time. So this is about not so much the skill level, because I think probably we could all master a glue gun. It's about the design and trying to do something that's a little bit different from placing everything evenly around the edge, and thinking, again, going back to our floristry principles about creating a focal area, an area of interest, and then we'd normally go to the middle-sized flowers, and then we go to the finer flowers at the end of the design. So we are actually using the principles and elements of floristry, but we're using them in a more creative and modern way. I'm just going to go back in. This one didn't stick. A bit more glue, and to think more carefully about where I'm going to place the flowers, and of course giving them a few seconds to dry. So in the event that when I think I've finished my wreath, what I'll do is give it a shake, and it will be a good way as well to decide, seeing which flowers have stuck on and which ones haven't. So to get on, as I shake it, I can see I've got a bit of wobbling here. So I can either peel the flower off, because the glue does get quite brittle as it dries, or I could just go back in with a bit of emergency TLC, and this time I'm actually gluing onto the branches, the actual wreath itself, and then you can glue flower to flower. So it's that art of getting enough glue on your flowers that they stick, but you want the flowers to be the interest and not everyone looking at the glue trails, because this does leave sort of strings of glue that you will need to clear off afterwards. So they do feel more secure. I didn't ever glue that one on the end, so let's glue that one on and nestling it down. And because the wreath, the way it's made, is quite open, it's got all those sort of nooks and crannies. When I come to glue, like here, I've got a stem on that flower, perhaps glue down the stem instead of gluing down the base. Head for the stem of the flower. Oops, just drop that. And then I can use that stem a bit, imagine it like it's a drawing pin, and I can slide that down between the branches, and that's got another way of holding it in place. And you would continue merrily on. Again, another flower there that really is open. I much prefer the ones that look tighter. It's a little bit like a lion's face there, or someone who's been totally shocked and the hair's been pushed backwards. So all these flowers have got a little bit of a story to tell. But as that is quite open, I'm going to put that towards the centre and fill that gap a little bit. I'm running out of glue. So what I'm doing, I don't know whether you, with your glue sticks, I quite often put a bit of the hot glue on the end of the glue stick. I'm then going to put back into my glue. So it sort of glues the glue stick to the one in front, ready to be melted, and so I can put it in place. So more glue, and I'm eyeing it up really. I'm just having a look, seeing what takes my fancy, and I say, because I'm trying to create this cluster of interest here, I'm layering the flowers one over the other, and that is where the glue is your friend, because you can be much more dramatic with your placements. So here I've got mainly shades of orange. So it would be nice if you had more variation in colour. Some of those, I think I probably had a handful of the red ones there, but it does look very autumny, and actually it does look quite colourful. I mean, that is the colour of autumn leaves, isn't it? So I think this is going to look really great. So I'm just going to finish off this top bit round here so you can see what I mean. So if you wanted the consistent look, you would just need more flowers to complete this project. But I quite like the way it's almost like a rainbow, or I know it's all the same colour, or an ombre. Have you heard that term, where you've got a solid colour and it leaks out? Or as if you had watercolour and you put a blob of paint on, and then it sort of runs through to sort of a nothingness of colour. And that's what I'm aiming to do here, a solid area of interest, and then having it petering out around the edges to possibly stopping, and then having the bare branches and then starting up a bend and coming out. And that's sort of creating that. We're after a rhythm and flow with our flowers, and that's what it's doing. Your eye lands on the most dense area and then trails around the edges. As I put in my last few pieces, I am going to go around a little bit around the edge, because where I'm going to put this, I will see the edges a little bit, but I'm not trying to cover up every single bit of the wreath, because I want to show it off and it's pretty. And of course, if you were making your own base by twisting your forsythia or your clematis, you'd want to show that handiwork off. Nothing worse than putting in loads of work and then nobody can admire what you've done. So if you are making your own wreath, that is another reason to really expose some of that work there. So you'll see me here gluing, and then if you need to sort of brace yourself and glue, you know, I have one hand around the back and then I'm pushing it on, and just for a matter of a few seconds it will stick and hold. So I will tell you, just as I'm putting this finishing touches to this last little bit here, before we come back to my main camera view, that the Christmas Zoom flower classes are starting on the 27th, I hope it is, of October. So we're moving to 12 o'clock for those ones, ladies. So demonstration 12 to 12:30. So if you're working, you can join me during your lunch break, and then if you've got time and the inclination, we will make and create together. So I will do the demonstration the same way, and then I'll stop the camera recording and we'll all sit and make and chat at the same time. So that is actually, I don't feel I finished it, but if I told you I'd finished that, I think you would be, oops, something's fallen off there. You would probably believe that, because it looks like a completed project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lift it up a little bit so you can see what I've done. So we'll go back to making, let's see if I can do it for you. If I replace spotlight. So I'm now come back. So I don't know whether, perhaps you're not, if you're not already looking at my face on the big screen, perhaps that is what you would like to do. And then I can hold the wreath up a little bit. So something did fall off. So I've got a bit of a gluey trail there. So I will fix that little bit on the side there. And then just finish that off. So there's no shame in things falling off. It's all part of the creative process. But if you were gifting this to somebody, or of course, you know, when you come to hang it up, you want to give it a shake first of all, because if you don't, you're going to end up with lots of bits falling across, and it's much easier to fix it when you've got your glue gun out and ready than it is to you know, try and do a running repair, because let's face it, it's never going to get fixed, is it, in real life, because you're just going to put that flower to one side thinking one day I'll come back and fix it in place. Joan's is saying very nice and goes in really well with the twig ring. Yes, it's a great contrast. So it's all about, you know, making a little story in with your flowers, and you can see there the contrast between, it's almost like bun moss. Do you know the green bun moss? You quite often see at Christmas, layered up over the top and then coming out at the edge. So really, I think I need to start spacing these out a little bit more, even though I have got gaps. They're not quite as defined. Let's be brave and space that out a little bit more, and then it's testing yourself the whole time. We're so used to doing a wreath that's, you know, covered all the way around, that when we try and do something a little bit different, it's a little bit out of the comfort zone. So I would say this is the visually heavy part, this is the lighter part, and there's my string at the top. So I just want to come around a little bit more. But actually, I may decide wherever the string is that I may put it on, you know, I could hang it or rest it in any area. So probably it would look a bit bizarre. I don't know, perhaps even that way up. I'm rather taken with it that way up. But you can decide, because it's a round, it will rest in all sorts of places. So you can decide what to do. So on that merry note, I am going to take you off. Actually, I'm going to stop recording, because I discover each week that I chop off the bit I don't send out. So it's going to help me to stop recording. So I'll stop recording, and then we can move over to the questions. So whether you've got questions about today, or whether you've got questions about the Zoom, the Christmas classes that are coming up, it's open house really. So I shall press stop.